Hello and welcome. My name is Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UFO, UAP news from everywhere and anywhere. So I've seen a lot of coverage of the Ariel School UFO encounter, but none as good as what I saw on Think Anomalous. It's brief, informative, and unbiased. In September of 1994, more than 60 children at the Ariel School witnessed a strange silver object land outside the playground and were approached by small black beings with large entrancing eyes. The children's stories alarmed their teachers and aroused the curiosity of the BBC and the esteemed Harvard physicist John E. Mack. Friday, September the 16th, was a clear and warm sunny day. During the regular 10:30 a.m. recess, all the teachers were attending a staff meeting inside the school, and only one adult was outdoors operating a tuck shop or snack store on the playground. Shortly after recess began, the tuck shop attendant, Allison Kirkman, volunteer and mother to one of the Ariel students, said that a bunch of the kids ran into the shop and told her about a, quote, little black man, end quote, on the playground. Kirkman thought that the kids were trying to trick her and refused to leave the shop. Shortly after, dozens of children rushed into the school, screaming about a landed craft outside the playground and little, quote, black men, end quote, with big black eyes. The teachers could tell that the kids were deeply frightened, but they could not believe what they were saying. The school's headmaster, Colin Mackey, sat the students down and had them each produce a drawing of the things they saw, as well as a written account of their experiences. These efforts committed the children's earliest memories to record and created crucial documentation for later investigators. Shortly after classes ended and the kids were sent home for the weekend, teachers saw several parents searching the ground at the edge of the schoolyard with their children. The yard was virtually empty, with minimal grass, no trees or bushes, and only a few play structures near the classrooms. The children said that the beings appeared beyond the fence at the furthest point from the school, not a place where the children typically played. Beyond this fence was a field covered in brush and short trees. There was nothing there that could have been mistaken for a UFO or an extraterrestrial, and no indication that anything had been there at all. The following Monday, the school was inundated with letters from parents asking what had happened to their children on Friday that made them so frightened and upset. Several students were traumatized and did not return to school for several days after the event. That week, Tim Leach, senior correspondent with BBC, visited the school. Leach spoke with the children and had them tell their stories for the first time on video. He found that they were all genuinely shaken and was convinced that they believed what they were saying. Leach later claimed that despite all his experience as a war reporter, it was the Ariel School incident that frightened him the most. Cynthia Hind, a MUFON field investigator and editor of UFO Afro News, was the first ufologist on the case. Gunter Hofer, an electronics enthusiast and acquaintance of Hind's, accompanied her and swept the yard with a Geiger counter with no unusual finds. The team also sent ground samples to the University of Zimbabwe, which returned with no significant anomalies. Hind interviewed 62 of the witnesses grades 3 and up and spoke with the school's teachers and administrators. Dr. John E. Mack, the noted Harvard Medical School psychiatrist and ufologist, was visiting Africa at the time to explore the abduction phenomenon there and visited Ariel School. He spent 2 days talking with the kids, accompanied by his assistant and a South African TV camera operator who filmed some of the interviews. Hind and Mack found that the witnesses' stories conflicted on many details, but converged on a few key claims. Most students agreed that a round, elliptical-shaped, silver-colored object appeared amongst some of the trees just beyond the boundary of the schoolyard. The object had a lustrous surface and a bright white or golden glow. Most of the students only saw the object on the ground, but some claimed to have seen it flying over the schoolyard before landing. The object glowed brightly from its landing place, attracting the kids' attention, so they ran towards the fence to investigate. At this point, one or two small black beings, approximately 1 meter tall, emerged from the object. Some kids said that one paced back and forth on the ground. Others said they saw one on the object doing the same thing. The being on the ground then began to move towards the students. The beings were mostly black with pale faces and huge elongated black eyes that were angled inwards. Very few of the students reported any other details about the beings' faces, though at least one saw a nose and mouth. 12-year-old Lucille and 8-year-old Emily remembered that the being hovered over the ground rather than walking, though others described it taking steps. Emily said that the two beings hopped alongside her and Lucille as if to imitate the girls skipping on the playground, though their feet never touched the ground. After covering a short distance, the figure or figures stopped and stared at the children, who all felt compelled to stare back in return. Emily said that the two beings she saw appeared in front of her instantaneously. At this point, some of the students began to feel that the beings were communicating with them telepathically. Several children saw visions of environmental catastrophe. Lucille said that she saw a vision of the earth after all trees had been cleared and there was no air left to breathe. Another student saw visions of polluted oceans. Emily saw a quick succession of still images showing scenes of the environment in crisis and was urged to use technology more responsibly. Another student, Emma, received a similar message about humanity's destructive use of technology and given the imperative that we mustn't get too technological. 11-year-old Salma was holding Emma's hand during the encounter, and yet she has no memory of any communication at all, though she felt that the being was gazing into her soul, as she put it. Both Salma and Emily have stated that they felt that the time was distorted for the duration of the encounter. Salma said that although she tried to run to the protection of her younger siblings, she was unable to break eye contact with the being. And after several minutes of staring at the children, perhaps as many as 15, the encounter abruptly ended, and the intruders disappeared. At least one student said that he saw the beings climb back inside the object and fly away again, but most said that the beings and the UFO simply vanished on the spot. Emily claimed that they disappeared at the instant that the bell rang for the end of recess, and her sense of reality immediately returned to normal. And although many of the students agreed on the details, there was a considerable amount of variation in their stories and some outright contradictions. Some students reported seeing the black entities, but not the silver object. Other students described the object in vivid detail, but had no recollection of the entities. Some students nearby to the action even said that they saw nothing at all. Multiple students attested to seeing a cluster of objects flying in the air, while others were adamant that they saw only one. As Hind, the MUFON ufologist, noted, although most of the students identified the object as some sort of vessel or craft, they could not agree on its appearance. Students variously drew windows, doors, lights, cockpits, landing gear, and many combinations of the above. Two boys said that it had stripes of black and green, others that there was a platform around the outside. One child drew it red. Most agreed, however, that it was generally elliptical in shape. There was also several different accounts of how the object arrived on the ground. Several noted that they saw flashes of bright, colorful lights above their heads before the sighting. And at least two students claimed to have heard loud noises in the sky. One student even described the flute-like sound. Another student claimed to have witnessed the object and several others flying along some electrical wires beside the schoolyard before landing in the field. He said that they flew over him with flashing red lights, disappearing and reappearing elsewhere in the sky several times before landing. Other students drew the object flying overhead in their illustrations as well. There was generally more agreement on the appearance of the extraterrestrials, But accounts varied here as well. Some described the figures as having long black hair, while others claimed to have seen no hair at all. One student described the beings as looking like, quote, plump humans with long, straight hair, though Emily saw beings with long necks and spindly limbs. Some students claimed that the beings wore skin-tight garments or shiny suits, and others thought that they were naked with black skin. One child claimed that the figures, quote, looked just like a shadow, end quote. Another young girl said that there were three beings in black, red, and white. While most teachers admitted to being initially skeptical of the children's stories, they later came to realize how profound the experience had been for these witnesses. The Ariel School headmaster acknowledged that he believed that the children saw, quote, something, end quote, but suggested that some of their recollections were products of their imaginations. However, other teachers were more sympathetic to the children's claims. It was difficult for them to accept that the children's imaginations had caused them all to conjure up such a strange experience and to react so dramatically. The teachers were generally convinced that the students could not have faked their hysteria when running into the school that morning, and that no one could have forced dozens of children to play along with the same hoax. The psychiatrist and ufologist Mack was also convinced that the students had shared an authentic experience and that it was unlikely, if not impossible, that they had all staged a hoax. The MUFON ufologist Hind received calls and letters from numerous people asserting that they had seen a fireball with a tail of sparks and smaller lights. The Ariel School incident appears to have been part of a broader wave of sightings, so there's no doubt that the Ariel School students saw something unusual that day. But what it was is still unclear. Still, years later, many of the students claimed that it was a powerful and transformative experience for them that initiated lifelong changes in their openness to new ideas and their general sense of purpose. Witnesses such as Salma, Lucille, and Emily continue to speak about their experiences at public events and on a variety of media platforms. So some of the inaccuracies in the children's reports could be due to an inability to accurately recall what they'd seen. Everyone knows that the human memory is highly faulty, especially when it comes to extremely traumatic or stressful events. But none of the witnesses have gone back on their claims or confessed to a hoax. Whatever the kids saw that morning, it moved them to a very deep level and changed their lives. And maybe that was the point. My name is Al Barrows. This has been UFO Disclosure. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks.